students, transfixed, didn't want to leave the hall. During a panel on failure, I saw looks of happy surprise come over students' faces when a faculty member talked about a paper that hadn't been accepted in a prestigious journal. The young women I worked with expressed relief when people they admired opened up about their own setbacks and mistakes. In fact, they seemed to respect these people for feeling comfortable sharing narratives that weren't just success stories, but were instead laced with emotions like anxiety, frustration, and shame. As part of my job, I was reading up on leadership, discovering what prominent experts believed leadership development actually looked like. Study after study showed that you, in fact, have to learn from mistakes and keep going in order to succeed. For example, psychologist Angela Duckworth's studies of grit, the ability to persevere through errors and setbacks, have led her to believe that it's one of the main ingredients in achievement. The internationally known psychologist Daniel Goleman writes about great leaders demonstrating a thirst for constructive criticism. Successful people are able to say to themselves, "Well, I may have screwed up. It doesn't mean I am a screw-up." It was an insight that seemed provocative, and it became the catalyst for this book. I decided to interview interesting and influential women, but instead of asking about all they'd done well, I'd ask about what they hadn't done well. I'd collect stories to emphasize what the research on leadership clearly showed, but that many people just starting their careers often didn't understand. That making mistakes is part of growing at work. While data show that high-achieving women and men feel pressure to be perfect in more or less equal measure, women may experience this pressure in unique ways, according to Patricia DiBartolo, a Smith College psychology professor who studies perfectionism. For example, women may feel social pressures more profoundly. Case in point, one day 5 different people each emailed me a report from Princeton University that said that female students were less likely than male students to run for leadership positions, in part because of pressure to act in socially acceptable ways. This is not a Princeton-specific phenomenon, the report emphasized. Soon afterward, a 19-year-old Barnard College student named Julie Zellinger published a piece on Forbes.com called "Why Millennial Women Do Not Want to Lead." "Young women today," she wrote, "are bred to doubt ourselves, question our worth, and view ourselves as improvable projects rather than embrace the imperfection of our humanity." The article clearly hit a nerve. It received almost 80,000 page views and was shared on Facebook almost 10,000 times. It's important to understand, though, that the workplace casts a more critical eye on women. Researchers Alice Egley and Linda Carley debunked the idea of a glass ceiling, a barrier that exists only at the top. Instead, their extensive analyses show that gender bias in the United States is alive and well at entry-level and senior-level jobs, for blue-collar workers and executives. Women are more likely to get flack for mistakes, especially in typically male roles. This phenomenon is called the glass cliff, and studies show that women of color are even more at risk for being perceived as incompetent. If women are giving themselves tight margins for error, this could easily be seen as self-preservation. The problem is that anyone who wants to innovate, gain recognition, or become a leader will need to take risks and realize that mistakes are inevitable. While acknowledging that sexism still exists, each of us can also consider inhabiting the role of the good enough leader, one who screws up but stays in the game. And our cultural discourse on women's leadership must also create space for conversations about imperfection. The women I interviewed were eager to break the silence. They understood the value of mistake stories as a kind of mentorship and agreed to contribute to this book even as our conversations disrupted their packed schedules. Luma Mufla met me for breakfast between speeches about Fuji's family, her nonprofit devoted to child survivors of war. Cheryl Strayed was in the middle of an ongoing publicity tour for her best-selling memoir, Wild. Legal scholar Lonnie Guinier fit in our conversations between filing a brief with the Supreme Court and turning in grades for her law students at Harvard. As I collected the interviews, common themes began to emerge. Some women talked about walking away from terrible supervisors or from jobs that were sapping the life out of them.